Welcome in, Tiger fans, to another edition, a fun edition of the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. As we get ready to rock and roll here, Glen, and man, we sit here on a Thursday night, and I still don't think I've recovered from the excitement level and maybe the blood pressure changes between what we saw on Wednesday evening in Omaha, LSU. Glenn, you've seen a lot of wins. You saw a really crazy run 2 years ago. That game, and Kyle Peterson said this afterwards, the game between LSU and Arkansas is one of the best that you'll probably see. That was unbelievable with what LSU was able to do. Never gave up. I believe John Eads tweeted this out. It's been a constant theme, and we've talked a lot about this season of what they can do and what they've been doing all year. Is you can never count this team out. They advanced the College World Series final. Tons of storylines we'll get into, obviously, with this Coastal Carolina matchup. But to kind of put a bow on the road to the final series, man, have you recovered? How's the blood pressure? Is the dog okay? Did the dog recover from the nervous pacing that you probably had in your living room watching that game?
Dog's okay. She was wondering why I was screaming my head off for a few seconds there late in the ninth inning. So she popped her head up from a deep sleep. But I was having a serious case of FOMO, just, watching that unravel. It was one of the craziest games I've seen. And look, I was there 2 years ago on my birthday, June 22nd, when Tommy White hit the walk-off homer to send them to the championship series. I think that will probably always be number one for me, just because I was there and I got to, it's just a different feeling when you're in the building kind of thing, and you just feel the tensions boiling over. But this one, I mean, is right there neck and neck. And I was just watching from home this time. And so, look, the last two swings, the thing that I came out kind of just thinking just overview thought of just the whole game and how it all played out. Those last two swings of Jared Jones's game there, certainly the homer that tied the game up at 3-3, and then the walk-off hit there in the ninth. He goes back-to-back innings there with those two hits. Those will be played in every highlight reel of LSU baseball going forward. I mean, those were as clutch of hits as you could have possibly had in those scenarios. I mean, he was a guy that was just so maligned, I think for some of the shortcomings he had early in the series, for some of the poor outings he's had in the postseason and in his junior season as a whole. It's quick to forget, man. He's the best hitter on this team, I think, when he's right. And I don't know that there's a number two that's particularly close in terms of how impactful they can be when they get into a ball, because he's done it time and time again this year. He did it earlier this regular season against Tennessee when their backs were against the wall. He's done it against Arkansas. He's done it against some of the best teams in the country, and come through for him in some really, really big time clutch moments where games can swing one way or another. So we can dive in a little bit more to the game, but I just thought that for him, for that guy who's came back for his third season and really was kind of the catalyst, I think, to how far LSU could go in this tournament. He's come through for them in some really big time situations and played some really good defense too. I mean, I don't want that to get lost either.
Yeah.
The entire infield really has played some really elite defense in Omaha. For him to shake off that ball that kind of slipped through his glove there and to come through with those two swings in the eighth and ninth inning, I think just shows how mature and how far he's come from a mental aspect this season. And that was a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, no, I was looking up some of the stats while you were talking about this team, and I think where they've gone in terms of come from behind wins. You mentioned Jared Jones. You kind of look at some of the analytics. Fangraphs, this year launched their college baseball kind of analytical stuff, and you know, I think we tend to focus on. And this is maybe being the prisoner of the moment, right? When you look at LSU this year, and we know they have a lot of we have a lot of diehard fans that are on our message board that tune into this podcast and watch this team week in, week out, day in, day out. You often have that football mentality where it's like, man, if you lose one or two, I mean, Glenn, I know you know this. We've both sat on those message boards, especially during that blowout. What was it, to Northwestern State this year during the midweek? where you had the football mentality where you lose one or two and it's over. I mean, that's the season, and that can happen in football, but baseball's totally different. And this team had some ebbs and flows. I was in Auburn when their bats were silenced against a really good pitching staff over there, and it looked not really good. We've seen some other series where it hasn't gone well, but just you mentioned it, like Jared Jones and some of these veterans and even some of the younger guys. I mean, Ethan Fry has had some big hits, throughout the portion of that. Derek Curiel is. I saw a tweet. It said Derek Curiel is like a 90-year-old man in a 18-year-old's body, and I'm like, when you talk to him, you even kind of get that feeling of the way he approaches the game. They're battle tested, and I think that even in that, and you'd be lying to yourself if you thought they were going to win that game, after what happened in the top of the ninth inning. But if you're really being truthful, like you never feel like this team's out of it, and I think it just goes back to over the course of a baseball season, growing together, the camaraderie that we've talked with these guys about, building that chemistry, and it's baseball. There's so many factors. I mean, Luis Hernandez hit that ball 104 miles an hour off the bat. And look, man, I've played baseball. You've played baseball. It's a hard game, and it's not a forgiving game. And I'll tell you one thing, like as we get in later in the podcast, you have to feel for Arkansas. And I know a lot of LSU fans will be like, I don't care. And I get that. But just from a competitive standpoint, Coastal's a very good team. We're going to talk about them here in just a second. On paper, LSU and Arkansas might be the two best teams in the country. And that was just a phenomenal, phenomenal game back and forth. And it's what makes you love baseball. So it's not a forgiving sport. Like we've talked about so many times, the Hall of Famers, man, they fail 7 out of 10 times at the plate. And so it's one of those things where it's a game of failure, learning from it. And I think this group has learned to never hang their head and get out of it, even when things don't go their way. And you mentioned that. Jared Jones, the tough defensive play, where it was just and in the redemption factor. I mean, it's just such a great storyline in this series. But LSU finds themselves playing Coastal Carolina, where when we can kick it off with the storyline aspect, obviously Tiger fans do not need to be reminded of just about a decade ago of what happened, and neither does Jay Johnson, who was eliminated by Coastal Carolina in Omaha that year with the Arizona Wildcats. So, in terms of storyline, picture perfect or picturesque, type of, I don't know, this is made for TV, the movie type of script that you could have with this, man. It did feel like when we looked at the bracket when it was coming out, I was like, man, if Coastal got matched up with the Baton Rouge bracket, that'd be awesome. But now they're going to match up in a best of 3 series. I know you've been a baseball fan and LSU fan for quite some time. Is there any kind of revenge factor for you in this one, wanting a little bit of taste of maybe getting a little revenge?
Yeah, I don't know that revenge. I think maybe that's a little too strong a word, but I do think that, look, I mean, this is a matchup that is 9 years in the making, because when you talk to people who have watched LSU baseball for decades upon decades and watched them go through all the glory years of Skip Bertman and just all the way through to where we are now. One of the first things you ask, like, what's the toughest loss that you've seen LSU have over the last 20, 30 years? And one of the first answers is this Coastal Carolina Super Regional. I mean, that was a very good LSU team that was very bullish on themselves potentially going to Omaha and making a serious run. And now, credit to that team, they did end up making a very serious run the next year. They lost to Florida in the national championship finals the very next year. But I mean, I remember the very first year I was covering the beat was 2017, was that season. And just the build up into that year was just like, we're on a mission, like the players were very much in like, okay, what happened to us last year is not going to happen to us again this year. And so they came in with a lot of heat, a lot of fire, and I think you still feel that and you see that to this day. I mean, you look at not 5 minutes after LSU punched their ticket to the championship series, Kramer Robertson, who was the star shortstop on that team, he's tweeting out about, "Come on, LSU, let's get this done this time," kind of thing. He was, it was because those things still stick with them. I mean, I was talking to Greg Dykman, who was the kind of outfielder and one of their star power hitters after the Super Regional. He was on the field, and after they punched their ticket to Omaha. He was on the field, and even he talked about just, man, like these moments are so cool, and they're just they only happen but so many times in your career, and so those guys, man, they still think about that. I'm sure the fan base feels the same way, and I'm sure Jay Johnson feels the same way too, because that was his first year at Arizona, where he took them on a magical ride to the college World Series Finals against Coastal Carolina, and they won Game 1. Lost the second and the third game by 1 run each. I mean, they were right there. That championship was right there for the taking for them, and so Jay is going to have, I would probably say the word opportunity is probably
Yeah.
a better word than maybe revenge. This is an opportunity for LSU, for their fan base, to kind of get one back, get one that maybe they lost, 9-10 years ago, to feel a little bit less of a sting. And I'm sure it's the same way for Jay Johnson. And Jay Johnson will never come out and he'll never say that stuff. But they definitely want to win this one. And that was something that I wrote about today. You guys can go check it out on the site, just about how this one carries a little extra meaning, I think, just because of who the opponent is and how well they're playing. Like, these are two
Yeah.
teams that are playing very, very well right now. These are very deserving teams to be in the College World Series Finals. And so I think we're in store for a really fun series here over the next couple of days.
Yeah, you mentioned, just how good these teams are, and I think one thing for me, like, and I'm watching and having, I guess we'll call it the earlier day games on, which Coastal Carolina's been more of, and LSU's gotten more of that primetime spot. One of the biggest things, and even listening to the broadcast and listening to some shows today about, is Coastal is such a complete baseball team, and I think that's one of the biggest things coming into this weekend or into this series is that we can talk about this, Glenn. I mean, I was texting some buddies about this, and they're like, "All right, Bryce, like, what do you think?" And I was like, "Here," and so let's paint it right here. I'll give it to you. I'll ask you what they asked me. You are in the best situation imaginable in terms of pitching. You're going to get to throw Cade in Game 1, Ianson in Game 2, and Case and Evans on full rest in Game 3. Should you play that? And really, nobody's going to be down. I mean, you might have a guy or two down on Friday, or I should say in Game 1 on Saturday, but you don't really have like this situation to where it's not a Paul Skeens cannot go. We are not throwing him like it was 2 years ago. While that is an advantage for Coastal, and it's going to be unlike something they've seen all year, and that's not a dismiss to them. The Chanticleers are one of the more balanced teams in the country, and they are playing some of the best baseball that you could possibly play. So where do you give the edge in terms of LSU's pitching? How much does that really matter to you when you have a team that's just playing so well, and maybe everything that is being thrown to them looks like a beach ball up there? I mean, that's a hard question for me to answer. So I said I'll pass it off to Glenn when we do the podcast.
Yeah, look, I mean, Coastal Carolina is the prototypical small ball team. Like, they don't have a ton of power in their lineup. I think they have 2 guys that have hit double-digit home runs on their roster, and I think they're like 10 and 12. So it's not like they're 20 and 24 kind of thing. Like, they very much rely on hard hit singles into the outfield. They rely heavily on their speed, on doing whatever they can to get into scoring position, and then knock those guys in a variety of ways. They have a number of hitters on that team that also do a great job of drawing free passes and hit by pitches. And so I think when you look at just kind of this team, I don't know if it's a direct comp, but UCLA kind of comes to mind, and just kind of the West Coast style that they play. And you just kind of took them on head on here a couple days ago, and I don't know if there's a direct correlation there, because I think UCLA has some really fantastic players when you talk about the shortstop there, and there's just some really good talent there on that program. But and not to say Coastal doesn't, because they have a lot of really good, solid players that just make you work for every out. I think that's probably the best way to describe them, and that's going to be a challenge, but one that I think if you're LSU, you got to feel extremely confident with, because you've got 2 guys that are the best top 5 pitchers in the country. I mean, like, certainly
Yeah.
the 2 best pitchers remaining in this, tournament and between the 2 teams, in Anderson and Ianson, and Ianson's only thrown 44 pitches in Omaha. You did
Yeah.
such a good job by not having to burn Ianson late Wednesday night, or if they had lost that game on a Thursday. Like, they are in such a good position with their pitching, to a point where, I mean, you could probably even bring Case and Evans back on Sunday, if you
Mhm.
were up late with a lead and you need, kind of just to close it out kind of thing. Like they have a lot of different options here that they can use. And really the only guy that I don't think would be available on Saturday and maybe not Sunday either would be Zach Cowan. Like, and I think he's
Yeah.
somebody that, on 5 days rest, he's a guy that has a lot of starting experience in his career. They could throw him on Monday too, and he would be fine. But I think that between Anderson and Ianson, whenever I'll just use the same quote that Jay's used and that we've kind of really settled in on here over the last 2 months. When those guys are on the mound, you love your chances to win if you're LSU,
Yeah.
and I think those two guys give the hitters a lot of confidence, the defense a lot of confidence, and so I just the other thing here is that Coastal Carolina probably hasn't seen 2 arms like this, back to back.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure they faced some great pitching here over the postseason. I haven't done a huge deep dive into some of their past opponents, but I have looked at kind of some of their numbers and some of the guys that they have, and I just think that this series sets up well for LSU if those pitchers are able to throw the ball over the plate. Cade Anderson is a wizard of being able to hit the corners, and if he's getting those calls in this game one, how deflating is that for Coastal Carolina early in the game if he's able to punch out several guys early on, for example, or something like that.
Yeah.
They've got a real shot here, I think, to lay the first punch in that first game with Anderson on the mound, and that's where I think the advantage lies for LSU because Coastal Carolina is a good pitching staff. Morrison and what's his name? Not Eichhoff, but Fluky. Morrison and Fluky. Those are the two kind of big arms that I think LSU could see on Saturday and Sunday to kind of lead things off. Those are really good pitchers, but I don't think they're in the same weight class as Anderson and Ianson. Those two
Yeah.
are pitching at an extremely high level right now, and I would give the edge to LSU based firmly on the fact that they have been able to rest those two guys and be able to keep them on schedule here throughout the duration of their trip to Omaha.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and just in terms of, and like I said, it's not a slide. Like you don't get to this final, Glenn, on a fluke. I mean,
They've won 26 straight. Like this is a
yeah,
very good team. Like, and I
very,
think we're
very good.
splitting hairs here because, and I didn't mean it to come across as like LSU's going to dominate these next couple games
Yeah.
because I don't think that's the case either. Like we could very well be settling into a pitcher's duel here in game one, but it's just which one blinks first. And I think Cade Anderson has those opportunities there under his belt now, those performances under his belt to be able to handle that situation.
Mhm.
And the same with Anthony Ianson. Those guys are just real battle tested by this point.
Yeah. They're battle tested, and I think another thing when we talked about that, like I said this leading up to the trip to Omaha. I said you need your stars playing like stars, and you need Cade Anderson to go out there and give you 6+, and you need Anthony Ianson to go out there and give you 6+.
Yeah.
And even if you get to a game 3, we have said this all year, and maybe this is the bold take. I don't think there is a team in the country right now, not obviously right now because there's only 2 teams playing, but there's a team in the country that feels as good as LSU does right now about going to their game 3 starter as the Tigers do and Jay Johnson does in Case and Evans. Now, it doesn't mean that it's foolproof and always going to happen. And just in terms of what he has done so far in Omaha, what he has done through this postseason, when you hand the ball to him and you know that the Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson cannot walk through that door, you feel pretty good about what you have coming out of the bullpen. And so, you talk about the relievers for LSU, man, and Glenn, I wanted to give some love. Like, I know it wasn't great, but I was listening to Jay Johnson talk on OTB this morning about some things, and he was very complimentary to what Chase Shores has done in his role so far in Omaha. And, eventually they're going to catch up to the Heat, and Arkansas is, once again, a great team, and that kind of happened last night. But just the job that this pitching staff and where they're at right now, and I mean, I'll say it, I think LSU wins this series because I do think that the pitching has shown, and, Dave Van Horn said this, and so did UCLA's head coach. LSU's like top 8 or 9 pitchers, it's nearly elite stuff in terms of the stuff that they have. And so just I guess from a standpoint of where we sat 2 months ago to now, I mean, is that a big reason maybe you believe LSU is going to win the whole thing? Just the depth they have in pitching and the way this thing could shake out?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the pitching staff has been what's carried this team really throughout the majority of SEC play, and the offense has had its really good moments in the postseason as well, with the West Virginia series, and coming through with clutch hits in Omaha and things of that
Mhm.
nature. But the real heartbeat of this team, I think, as we kind of look back on it, is going to be the pitching staff and how those guys have evolved over the course of the entirety of the season. And it's a great point you bring up with Chase Shores, because I'm sure that there were a lot of people after the first month of the season that thought, man, Shores, he's coming off 2 years of Tommy John stuff. The command, the stuff is there, but the command is not there. He doesn't have very much control over his secondary pitches, and LSU tweaked a few things with him in the middle of the season where they put him in the stretch full time to kind of help him with his command issues, and um, it's worked real well here over the
Yeah.
last couple weeks. I mean, his stuff has looked real different. I just watching it on TV is a little bit different than watching it in person, because I mean, you can see that it's throwing the ball hard, but you can't really see the movement. You can't really see the deception. And his slider, man, he threw a 91 mile per hour slider against Arkansas, and I was like, wait, what? I mean, yeah, I didn't realize he had that kind of velocity with that slider. I mean, I mean, that thing just really went in there fast. And he's been kind of like, and I'll equate it to this because I just have the 2017 on my mind, the 2017
Yeah.
team on my mind. Zach Hess was a freshman on
Mm.
that team, and Hess was a guy who would throw 98, 99, 100. And he came in, I want to say 3 or 4 different times during their College World Series trip that year, and just shut teams down in the 8th and 9th inning. I mean, he was as electric and dominant a closer as you could possibly want in those games. And Shores, yes, they got to him a little bit there. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was pitching for the 3rd time in 3 games, and Arkansas
Yeah.
is also just a really good hitting team, and you thought they would figure him out eventually. But he was electric and dominant in ways that really remind you of just how elite a great closer is for your team. And
Yeah.
been that. I thought that, look, Casey Evans did a really good job of slamming the door shut in that first game. Then he bounces back in game 2 on the weather delay, gives you, I think, 4 or 5 innings there to eat up the middle of those innings against UCLA. He's battle tested now as a freshman. That dude's going to be so freaking good over the next couple of years. Um, and they have some other arms they can throw out there. Jaden Newt gave him a really solid inning
Yeah.
yesterday. Cooper Williams, I know it didn't go as well for him, but he got them some big outs in that game too. So they have some guys that they can turn to here out of the bullpen, and guys that they really haven't used yet either. I mean, they haven't used Maverick Rizzi, I don't think, the entire trip to the College World Series. I wouldn't exclude him from having an opportunity there. I think they've been pretty sparse with how they've used the bullpen, because those guys at the top have been able to kind of control things, and
Yeah.
that's what's most impressive, and what I think a lot of those guys are going to have to do. Even Jacob Myers yesterday.
Yeah.
What's the one thing we've been talking about with Jacob Myers? Throw the ball over the plate, and that thing's going to be really hard to hit. They got the one hit off of him there in the 9th inning with a couple runners in scoring position. But he comes back and he doesn't let it get any worse. He strikes out the
Mhm.
next 2 guys. 7 of his 9 pitches were for strikes. He's going to make himself quite a bit of money by throwing the ball over the plate at 101 miles an hour. So
Yeah.
he's somebody you could see this weekend too. Like I think you're right. The pitching depth is what's going to be maybe a little bit different from anything that Coastal Carolina has seen to this point in the season, and probably why I think LSU is going to have at least a perceived edge going into this series. With that being said, you never really know, because it's
Yeah.
baseball, and strange things happen. I mean, nobody picked Coastal Carolina to go run the tables in 2016. I'm not sure many people had Coastal Carolina running through the postseason at this rate that they have. I mean, they have not lost a game over a month and a half. I mean, they've won 26 straight. They are on an absolute heater right now, and those kinds of teams are dangerous to play when they have confidence and when they have a belief about them. And so they're not going to be scared of LSU. LSU is not going to blow them away with their pitching. They just got to be patient. They got to be able to put those guys down when they give them opportunities. And the real question for me is going to be how well the offense is able to carry over too, because I'll ask you this: like, I think the offense has been pretty solid for the most part, and they've come through with the big clutch swings. They've done a nice job of jumping on teams early,
Yeah.
in all three of these games, really. But like, I don't have worries or concerns as much as just like how is this finals going to be for them? Like, how are they going to be able to handle the pressure of it and all that stuff? Like, that's all real things that crop up in a finals when you have these 18, 19, 20-year-old players. And so I think mindset and focus is going to be huge for this team at the plate. And what are your thoughts on just kind of how this offense maybe matches up with the Coastal Carolina pitching staff?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about this pitching staff, and I think for Coastal, like they're just efficient, and throughout this run in Omaha, even too. I mean, they just make you uncomfortable, and just watching some of the at bats that teams have taken against them, the way that they're able to change speeds really well. I mean, Coastal's probably got one of the best closers in the game that nobody's talking about in terms of the back end of the bullpen. So I think that for LSU, I mean, one of the complaints I've seen a lot on social media was, oh, they're way too comfortable getting deep into counts. And I think that is something that could probably hurt you, in this game. If you let Coastal kind of set you up and what they want to do in their game plan, you're kind of playing with fire a little bit. So, being aggressive, on that first pitch strike, on that first pitch fastball, making sure that you're dialed in from the beginning is going to be huge. Offensively, man, and I know it probably goes without saying, like you just can't go quiet. You just cannot go dark with this offense. I think that we've seen probably over the last 2 to 3 games, especially, they can wake up, and when they wake up, it's like an onslaught, like it's an avalanche type of effect. So when they score, they can score in bunches. It doesn't really feel like it's one here, one there. I mean, that occasionally has happened, but like, even last night's game, and we're recording this on Thursday evening, but Wednesday night's game against Arkansas, like they were able to put up some crooked numbers. And so I think just in terms of you have to be able to your approach has to combat what they do well. And what Coastal does well is they execute their game plan. And if you let them get 0-2, 1-2 on you, you're going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be a comfortable at bat. I don't care who's hitting. And LSU has some really professional talent in that lineup. I think I'm fascinated to watch probably that battle more than anything else,
Yeah.
because I feel like, and we go back to it, the pitching staff for LSU, I'm not saying they should tame Coastal. Coastal's seeing everything right now, but you feel like on paper here's the advantage. You have a perceived top 5 pick. You have Anthony Ianson, who's kind of sliding into the back half of the your first round, and then you've got Case and Evans and the whole bullpen. But offensively, it's like you have a lot of firepower, but Coastal's doing so well managing their game plan right now to where they're probably playing a little bit outside of themselves. And
Yeah.
playing a little bit of house money. We know we've used that term a lot talking baseball. So I think that for me, Glenn, is kind of the biggest thing is maybe the approach. And I don't know if that's something that you've kind of picked up on. I've just seen that on social media recently, like, a guy that really does this, and he's had success with it, so I'm not knocking him. A guy like Derek Curiel. Like, I don't think you're going to see a guy who's more comfortable in a 1-2 hole than Derek Curiel is. But
Right.
if you do that a lot against a team that knows what they want to do and does their plan very well, I don't know if you want to, play with that situation that much.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say, and just kind of in regards to this offense and how maybe they can have some success, I think it's very advantageous for LSU that so many of these pitchers that Coastal Carolina relies on are righties. I think all their starters really are right-handed. A lot of their big bullpen arms are right-handed. They have a couple lefties that they bring out of the bullpen. But look, I mean, LSU, I think you're going to get to see a lot of left-handed Stephen Milam this weekend, which I
Yeah.
think is probably his dominant side. You're going to see a lot of Jake Brown, who's seeing just beach balls right now in the postseason. I mean, I think those two, Milam and Brown, are maybe like the two most consistent guys for you that are at the plate. from the start of the postseason till now, like they've made the most of their opportunities. Curiel is probably going to have a lot of opportunities to get on base in this game, facing some righties. I think that is the one angle here that we need to talk about a little bit, just because LSU's done a really nice job against right-handed pitchers in this tournament, and I think that's something that they should be able to utilize in this series. And so I'm curious, because what Jay has done here is, I don't think he's not telling his hand too with how LSU is going to operate this weekend, because things have been just so different with the different teams that they've
Yeah.
faced. Like, we've seen guys move up and down the lineup here that I just didn't, I flatly didn't see happening. Like, I did not think that they would be playing, Josh Pearson in the leadoff one game, and then in the very next game, it's, back to Curiel, and Jones is down to fifth. Jones is down to, Curiel's down to seventh in one game. I think, you've moved Stanfield out of that 9-hole. He's hitting the 8-hole in one game, and then he's back to the 9-hole in another. They've mixed and matched a lot here based on the teams that they've been playing, and so I'll be very curious to see what that looks like against a right-handed heavy pitching staff that Coastal Carolina has, because I do think they have a lot of answers for anything that Coastal could throw at them, and just situationally, like, Jay Johnson is in his bag right now. Like, the coaching matchup between him and Van Horn yesterday was, I mean, if you're a deep baseball fan, you'll notice some of the things that they were doing. But I mean, the Jake Brown pinch hit, for example, like not going to Jake Brown a batter early, like I think a lot of us thought with Josh Pearson, letting them walk Josh Pearson, intentionally walk Josh Pearson, and to try to get to Stanfield for a righty-righty matchup. And then that's when you bring in Jake Brown to get the go-ahead 2 RBI hit there in the middle part of that game. Like, there's just some wizardry going on right now. Jay Johnson's pushing all the right buttons. I think that needs to be a shout out of this thing as well, is that this is a championship coach that, that LSU has right now, and a guy who's operating at a very high level, knows exactly what his team is capable of, what each player is capable of in the position that he's putting them in. And that's a real positive tool that you can use in this weekend as well. So I just think that they are in a really good spot here. I mean, we talked about it a lot already, like the pitching, the how they can kind of mix and match different guys based off of, offensively, where they feel like Coastal is going to maybe have some success. And I think it's going to be a big weekend for those guys. And so, does Tanner Reeves, another left-handed batter, do you see him with some of the offensive struggles that have plagued Michael Braswell for most of the postseason? I don't know that they take Braswell out just because of how great his defense has been for LSU over at third base, but a big-time pinch hit opportunity, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it's Josh Pearson, or if it's Tanner Reeves or somebody that's called upon late in the game to get a big pinch hit from the left-hand side. Like, there's just a lot of different ways that I think LSU's roster stacks up well with Coastal Carolina. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be about these guys sticking to their plan, sticking to their approach, not getting out of themselves. And they haven't really done that. Like, that's the one thing about this team, is that they are very consistent in kind of their mindset and their focus and their approach. Like, they don't get rattled by very much. And I think that helps a lot when you played in 11 games that are 1-run difference. I mean, they're 8-3 in 1-run games this year. They're battle tested. They played the best. They know what to expect, I think, with this series and what it takes to win a championship. They have a number of guys that have been there, done that on the field, in the dugout. I like where LSU sits going into this weekend, and I think that they're able to get this done and bring in number 8 for the program.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you as we put a bow on this one. I really do think that this is a situation where I don't want to discredit Coastal, because I think they're a great program. I think they just played the game the right way. Like, they're very efficient. They don't make a lot of mistakes. And there's a lot to like about how they're playing, but I'm telling you, and even if you take off the purple and gold glasses,
yeah,
the way that LSU's just continuing to bang on that door, and they're just eventually that's going to come down, and eventually it's going to open. I like LSU to win this one. I will take it to 3 games, though. I do. I will take it to 3 games. I think Coastal's going to get one of these first two, and it's going to set up a finale on Monday night that's going to have the whole city of Baton Rouge shut down. I did want to say this before we get out of here, man. You know me, and you know that we're not native to this area, but my wife has been so impressed at work. My wife is a physical therapist. For those that don't know, not an ad, but Baton Rouge Rehab Hospital, off of Essen Lane. And she has said the amount of patients that have come to her and decked out in LSU gear for the past couple weeks, it's really cool. And I think that it's just, man, it'd be really, really fun to see this team and this program come back to Baton Rouge. And, that was my welcome to Baton Rouge moment, Glenn. That was the first event I ever covered was that
Yeah.
that championship celebration. It would be a lot of fun to do it 2 years later. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll obviously have some reactions heading out of this series and what happens. And hopefully, Glenn, the next time we convene, man, we're talking about the 8th national title and another big celebration coming back to Baton Rouge. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yep,
He is Glenn
absolutely.
West. My name is Bryce Koon. Oh, go ahead.
No, we got baseball. We got a big recruiting weekend coming up here. Official visit season's winding down, so we'll have everything covered over there at the site. But thanks for hopping on, guys, and see you next time.
We will see you next time. That is Glen West. My name is Bryce Koon. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe on all those platforms, the YouTube, all the podcast platforms where you find that on that audio. And we'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.